Hey everyone, Kyle Mike here from MLive.com, joined by Justin Rogers. We're back at Allen Park for the first batch of OTAs. Justin, today is day 2 of this 3-game set of OTAs. It's the first look we've gotten of the team on the field in 2015. We have a lot to get to, but what was your biggest takeaway from today's practice?
Not just individual deals. We saw the full practice day. Big deal. Biggest takeaway, probably Kellen Moore. You know, last year I never thought like the guy had a real shot at being the backup quarterback, even though he played exceptionally well through training camp in the preseason. I always felt like that was, I don't want to say gifted to Dan Orlovsky, but it was just, he seemed locked into that spot last year. Today you just wrote it. We saw Kellen get a good deal of second-team snaps, and I think there's going to be a real competition this year. I don't think they're going to give it to Kellen Moore. I don't think they're going to give it to Dan Orlovsky. I think it's really going to be decided on the field, and that's best for everyone.
Yeah, the Lions said they would make this a battle, and I think even that language was different than last year when Caldwell was pretty steadfast and Orlovsky being the guy. So it already felt like something was going to change a little bit this year. If you look at the contract numbers for Kellen, that too signaled they were pretty serious about him factoring more into the mix this year. And then this is the first sustained reps we've seen from him as a number 2 quarterback, and he tried to downplay it as much as possible after the practice. Of course. Kellen's a pretty private guy, but he really deflected the attention as much as possible. But even getting the second team reps that he did today, that's a change, and I think the Lions really are considering him for that role, and he has a possibility to do it. I liked what I saw from him. I mean, he still lacks the arm strength to be an everyday starter in the NFL, but it's easy, like I wrote in the story, it's easy to see what the Lions like about him. He makes a lot of right decisions. He has he might be the most accurate quarterback they have in terms of just straight accuracy and putting the ball in a spot where the receivers can get it, a catchable ball. And I think all that was pretty apparent today, and you can really see some development in his game.
I wonder sometimes when we talk about his arm strength if we undervalue it because we see it next to Stafford, who just has a cannon that's always shooting at full speed. 3-yard check down, let me throw it at you.
I saw one of those today.
Yeah, and so Moore can he can unload a deep ball. We saw it in college. We've seen it in the preseason, but just a typical pass to the far sideline. It doesn't have that same zip that Stafford's ball does, and that's everybody's going to have their different strengths and weaknesses. I would agree with you that Moore is the most accurate quarterback on the roster, but
he just can't make every throw, and that's the difference between him and a guy like Stafford. Elsewhere on the offense, I thought it was interesting. Manny Ramirez is taking the reps, the first team reps at left guard ahead of Laken Tomlinson.
Sure.
I think we both expect Tomlinson to eventually earn that first team role at left guard. That's why you draft a guy like that. And I think if Ramirez is in the starting lineup, something's probably gone wrong, either at left guard or at center. He's going to be a good backup, I think, but you draft Tomlinson to play right away in the first round, and you draft Swanson as they did last year to start right away at center. Swanson was at center today. Manny Ramirez did say after the practice that he does anticipate taking some reps at center, so he'll be prepared for both roles. But making the young gun earn it a little bit, I think, at this point.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I talked to another beat writer this week. I was doing the research for that offensive line age project, and was kind of looking for depth chart information around the league. And he said it perfectly. You don't draft a guard in the first round to sit him. Maybe you could draft a tackle to develop him, but when you draft a guard, that's a plug-and-play guy, or you're failing in his organization. If Laken Tomlinson is not in the starting lineup, that's a real bad pick. So we both expect him. In terms of pass catchers, a lot of balls hit the ground today. That's kind of the nature of it.
And it was on the receivers and it was on the quarterbacks too. It was
for sure.
I wouldn't point the fingers too much at either group, but it was definitely not in sync, I thought.
Yeah, Eric Ebron had a rough day. He put at least 3 that we counted on the ground. There was a 4th that no reasonable man would have caught. It was a very difficult catch. He was defended very well down the middle, but there were 3 catchable balls he put on the ground. One receiver I thought that did look good, everybody's favorite, Ryan Broyles made a couple really nice catches, 2 in traffic, one where cornerback Cresden Butler got a hand on it. I thought he knocked it down, and Broyles popped out of that pile with the ball. So, it's OTAs, it's May, we're 2 months away from training camp, but a good start for Ryan.
Good start for Ryan, bad start for Ebron, as you mentioned. I caught up with Ebron after practice, and he had said that he feels as good as ever, or better than ever. And he had, I thought, a subpar workout. But the optimism is high there with him, and he certainly looks different. He looks more developed, stronger. He said he's working out back home. One interesting thing with him was he said he's doing 15 push-ups now for every drop pass in practices and in games and so forth.
So he
might be getting pretty big here by the start of the season. In the offensive backfield, just finishing out the offense. No Joik Bell today. He's sitting out while recovering from surgery, and no Amir Abdullah. He's in LA for the rookie premiere.
Right.
So it was the Theo Riddick show.
Yeah.
And cast of characters. Theo Riddick was the number one tailback with those two guys out. And we got our first real glimpse of guys like your boy Zach Zenner. What do you think of Zenner?
You look good. You look quick. You know, it's really tough to tell in pads. I always feel like running backs and linebackers are like the two toughest positions to judge at this time of year. But
I agree. That's why I asked, because it's, you look at these guys like a Desmond Martin. I was curious to see him, the kid out of Wayne State. But everyone's at half speed. No one's hitting. It's hard to tell exactly who's executing their assignments. It's hard to see vision from a tailback, which is pretty important, all that stuff. It's difficult to get a read on those guys.
I saw Theo Riddick get chased down by Don Carey, which kind of confirms what I already knew about Theo Riddick's straight line speed. It's just that's his weak point, guys.
Listen, I expect Theo Riddick to play more this year. I just don't think it'll be as a rusher. I just don't think you draft Abdullah in the second round and return Joik and somehow mix Theo into that as a rusher. I just don't see it happening. I think he'll play quite a bit, but mostly as a pass catcher.
No, I think it'll be an increased role of what he did last year. He'll have less than 50 carries. I think that's safe to say. But 35-ish reception I think he had last year. I would think 50 is a very reasonable ballpark, and maybe even more given the fact that Bush isn't here anymore.
Flipping into the defense, the one guy who stood out to me is Darius Slay. I saw a number of really good plays from him. There's a play in the end zone where Stafford was throwing it to the end zone to Golden Tate. And the ball was slightly underthrown, but that's a ball we've seen Golden Tate go up and get in games. And Slay made a great break on the play and broke up the pass. And I thought he had a real good day again. And his development seems to be continuing. He's a guy who made a huge jump from year 1 to year 2, and I think there's reason to believe he's going to be even better in year 3.
Heavy rotation on the defensive line today, but Karan Reed got a lot of first-team work. Coaches, both Terrell Austin and Jim Caldwell, spoke very highly of the work that Reed's done in the offseason. They really feel he's transformed his body. Princeton to the NFL is a big jump any way you look at it, so he didn't do a whole lot his rookie season. You don't expect a lot of fifth-rounder from Princeton, but I think they're expecting more from him, and they're very curious, as we are, to see what he's going to do once the pads come on.
My impression of the defensive line was expletive. Haloti Ngata is a big man. He is a big man. He looks like two people on the defensive line, more so than even Nick Fairley did at Nick Fairley levels. I think he's going to be. You can't really tell anything in the trenches at this point, but it was cool seeing him for the first time and after the trade, and that certainly him and Tyron Walker and that combination will be one of the most watched, I think, storylines of the OTAs and throughout the offseason.
I kept doing a double take on 98 because I'm so used to seeing Fairley as Devin Taylor now, and very, very different body types. Very nice of them to buy Devin Taylor in New Jersey. It was more fitting.
Stephen Tulloch and DeAndre Levy were both held out of team drills, probably just as precautionary type stuff. We don't really know, but Tulloch said after the work that he's feeling good.
He's cleared.
He's cleared. He's clearly frustrated with the line of questioning. I think he's tired of talking about the knee and just wants to play. He made it a point. He made it a point to say that he thought he was off to his best start in his career last year in the 3 games that he played, and just feels good to be back on the field. And he thinks the scheme is a good fit. We just haven't seen much of him in the scheme, so it'll be kind of interesting to see his development, maturation therein.
Yeah, Tahir Whitehead played admirably. I would go as far as say exceeded expectations for what people expected when coming in for Tulloch. But you can't just throw Tulloch aside. I know a lot of people wanted to cut him. They looked at the contract this offseason and thought cap space was there to be had, but Stephen Tulloch's a really good football player. He has some of his weaknesses with pass coverage as his size, but in this defensive scheme where he can be more aggressive in attacking the run lanes and even rushing the quarterback, he can be a very dynamic weapon. So if he comes back healthy, I expect Tulloch to have a great year.
That's what we got from day 2. The OTAs is closed on Thursday, so we'll be done for the week. But we'll be back here in Allen Park next week, Wednesday, for the second round. So keep it right here. For Justin Rogers, I'm Kyle Meinke. We are MLive. Keep it right here.